Welcome back to the Lights Out podcast, bedtime stories for boys and girls around the world. Good evening, boys and girls. Are you ready for bed? Are you all snuggled up and ready for another Lights Out bedtime story? Good, because you're in for a treat tonight. That's right, because we have a set of books about the Large Family by Jill Murphy. And tonight's story is called A Quiet Night In. Once upon a time.
I want you to all go to bed early tonight, said Mrs. Large. It's Daddy's birthday, and we're going to have a quiet night in.
Could we be there too? Asked Laura.
No, said Mrs. Large. It wouldn't be quiet with all you lot charging about like a herd of elephants.
But we are elephants, said Lester.
Smarty pants, said Mrs. Large. Come on now, coats on, it's time for school.
That evening, Mrs. Large had the children bathed and in their pyjamas before they had even eaten their tea. They were all very cross.
It's only 4:30, Mum, said Lester.
It's not even dark yet.
It soon will be, said Mrs. Large grimly.
After tea, the children set about making place cards and decorations for the dinner table. They all tidied up. Then Mrs. Large tidied up again. Mr. Large arrived home, looking very tired.
We're all going to bed, said Lester.
So you can be quiet, said Laura.
Without us,
said Luke.
Shh,
said the baby.
Happy birthday, said Mrs. Large. Come and see the table.
Mr. Large sank heavily into the sofa.
Oh, it's lovely, dear, he said. But do you think we could just have our dinner in the trays in front of the TV? I'm feeling a bit tired.
Of course, said Mrs. Large. It's your birthday. You can have whatever you want.
We'll help,
said Luke. And so the children ran to the kitchen and brought 2 trays.
I'll set them,
said Mrs. Large. We don't want everything ending up on the floor.
Can we have a story before we go to bed?
asked Luke.
Please,
said Lester.
Go on, Dad,
said Laura.
Just one story,
said the baby.
Oh, all right, said Mr. Large. Just one then.
Lester chose a book, and they all cuddled up on the sofa. Mr. Large opened the book and began to read.
One day, Binky Bus drove out of the big garage. Hello, he called to his friends, Mickey Milkfloat. I don't like that one, said Laura. It's a boy's story. Look, said Mr. Large, if you're going to have to argue about it, you can all go straight to bed without any story at all.
And so they sat quietly and listened while Mr. Large read to them. And after a while, he stopped.
Go on, Daddy,
said Luke.
What happened after he bumped into Danny Dustcart? Did they have a fight?
asked Lester.
Look, said Laura. Daddy's asleep.
Shh, said the baby.
Mrs. Large laughed.
Oh, poor Daddy, she said.
Never mind. We'll let him snooze a bit longer while I take you all up to bed.
Will you finish the story for us, Mum?
asked Lester.
We don't know what happened in the end, said Luke.
Please, said Laura.
Story,
said the baby.
Move up then,
said Mrs. Large, and she picked up the book and began to read.
Watch where you're going, silly dustcart, said Binky.
Just then, Pip the police car came driving by. After a while, Mrs. Large stopped reading.
What's that strange noise?
asked Lester. It's Mummy. She's snoring, said Luke. Daddy's snoring too. They must be very tired, said Laura kindly. Shh, said the baby. And so the children crept from the sofa and fetched a blanket. They covered Mr. and Mrs. Large and took them in. We'd better put ourselves to bed, said Lester. Come on. Shall we take the food up with us? Asked Luke. It is on trays. It's a pity to waste it, said Laura. I'm sure they wouldn't mind anyway, and they wanted a quiet night in. Shh, said the baby. The end of A Quiet Night In by Jill Murphy. Here on the Lights Out podcast, bedtime stories for boys and girls and tired mummies and daddies around the world. Good night.